All right. So I would just want to thank everybody for coming in on this live webinar. I have been posting quite a bit on Facebook these 60-second yoga teaching tips. And I just really thought it would be nice to create a class, which is really the class that I share on my teacher training on the art of teaching, actually, and how we can really feel confident and relaxed when we're working with a class. Because as a new yoga teacher, it can be really challenging when you sit in front of your class. And just to be completely transparent and honest here, I was so nervous just like 10 minutes ago about this, because I've got like 7 pages of notes. I worked for the last couple of days, and I just think like, oh my God, is it gonna flow? Am I gonna lose the plot? I've never done something online like this before. So I just want you to know that as a new yoga teacher, it's not going to be smooth sailing from day one. And everything that you're dealing with as a new yoga teacher is like a new opportunity to learn and grow and develop your style. So, my style as a teacher has developed over, I would say, the 35 years of practice that I've had. And I don't even know what it is. Like when someone says to me, oh, what style of yoga do you teach? I just say, well, I just teach yoga, because my experience over those years has changed so much. But I do know that when I walk into a room and there's all kinds of levels and all kinds of abilities and all kinds of expectations, that I've got the tools under my belt to meet those expectations. And that really comes from practice and experience. I wanted to ask you guys what you feel makes a great teacher in your own experience.
I have one thing, yes, which I think is important. It's Eve here. Is planning. I think if you go into a classroom and you have a plan, even better if it's written down and you've thought it out and practiced it, then that sort of gives you some courage, like you've got a little structure there that you can rely on.
So anybody else want to contribute anything in their minds that they feel makes a great teacher? Thank you, Eve.
This is Trish, and I've started teaching, and I'm discovering that what gives me the best connection to my students is my presence.
So planning and presence. Anyone else? Chrissy, what do you think?
I've been teaching 7 years, and I teach all ranges of yoga. So I teach yin, restorative, hatha, and I even blend the whole 3 into one class. I have found that I'm not a planner. I just come up with a theme or an idea for the class, and then I'll just roll with it. And if I stuff up, I stuff up and we all laugh together. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes like when that happens, people will come up to me at the end of the class and they'll go, that was a really good class. So I think it's about being authentic, being true to yourself, true to where you are on your own yoga journey. That it makes a great teacher.
Beautiful. Okay, so planning, authenticity, being present. Laura, have you got anything to add?
I don't have a lot of experience as a teacher, but I've got experience being taught. Maybe from my point of view, I would see that a great teacher needs trust on what they're teaching, like on their own capabilities. Trust yourself first and what you have to offer that is good.
And I'm sure as everybody's watching this, you're just reflecting on what in your mind makes a great teacher. You're probably thinking about the great classes that you went to. So I wrote down a few words here, which I wanted to share with you. Expertise, knowledge, commitment, passion, care, the ability to nurture others, a good communicator, life experience, anatomical knowledge, good hands-on assist, somebody who's personable, humble, present we have already, great sequences, challenging, learned in asana, pranayama, meditation, even understanding yoga philosophy. So, you know, a great teacher just embodies all the different aspects of yoga, but it can be as simple as just an ability to be present, as simple as an ability that they're trusting, that they're authentic. So it doesn't have to be all these things, but having some of those qualities really is really useful. So just thinking for yourself for a moment, we won't do a sharing, but just have a thought or maybe jot down, you know, what is the one thing that you know about yourself as a person that you can rely on in your teaching, that you can really bring through in your teaching. And so my next question, or my next sort of contemplation is, what are your expectations of yourself? And how do you, what do you expect? And do you feel like when you're teaching that those expectations are fulfilled? And if you feel like sometimes, well, I should be like this, but I'm not like this, you know, can you let that go? Can you actually step into that space of trust and go, you know what, it may not be absolutely perfect for me, but it's perfect for the group? Because ultimately, in just being yourself and sharing what you know as a yoga teacher is enough for the group that has arrived to learn with you. And this is something that it's taking, this sort of learning has been more important for me than anything else on my yoga journey as a teacher, is that I have to trust that all the training and all the things that I've done are enough. Because if I go into that room feeling like I'm not enough, I don't know if I can really meet the needs of this group, I won't. And I won't for myself, you know? So it's so much about trusting that what you have garnered and the experience that you have is really enough for the students in that particular moment. That will carry you through. The other thing that I feel is absolutely imperative and something you need to do before the start is to make a choice to be accepted. Because if you make that choice, if you just choose no matter what happens, my goal is to be accepted to the group, then it will be. It's just like the universe can't help but conspire to make that happen. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment, and I'm going to lead you through a little practice, which is what I do before I teach to inspire that community service. So just sit comfortably. And
Rachel,
audio on, maybe mute your audio, and then just close your eyes and just take a couple of breaths. Just notice where you are right now, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So there's no judgment here. Just be with what is. And then center your energy in your heart and choose to be of service to the group. And feel this as a gift to them and yourself. So you want to see each student as a great being, responsible and powerful. So each person that you're serving is powerful and responsible in their own right. They can take care of themselves, and you're just here to facilitate their experience. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes. So that's just a really simple practice that I used to do, and I still do before my class, is to really be of service to the students. And I used to do something silly, like I would, like I'd be in the class and then people would be talking and there'd be all this vibe, and I'd be like, I just have to go to the loo, and I'd go to the loo and I'd do it there. Or I do it when I was just like, okay, everybody, close your eyes, just take a moment. And I would just feel in that moment with that, you know, experience of being of service. And whenever I do that, I just feel like the class always just is perfect, just as it is. So I'm going to send everyone a PDF download with the notes from today so that you'll have them. But I want to jump into the topics now because we actually have already used up about 20 minutes just saying hi and sharing. And I have like these 8 points I want to cover. I don't know if I'll get to them all, but let's see how we go. So the first point is, how do we bring breath and alignment and everything seamlessly into the class while confidently moving through the room? So the first thing I want to say about that is you need to know exactly what the breath is doing in every single pose that you teach. So an inhalation is usually extension and an exhalation is usually flexion. So in any sequence or any posture, if you know that when you say extend the arms up for Trikonasana, it's an inhalation. And when you flow through into the posture, it's an exhalation. It's going to be much easier to call the breath than if you don't know, you know, what's an inhalation and what's an exhalation. So if you haven't learned this already, and you're not a seasoned teacher, I mean, like I said, there's people here who have been teaching for 6 or 7 years, so you're probably very confident with that. But if you're not, you want to go through all the postures that you've learned and write down, this is an inhale, this is an exhale, this is an inhale, this is an exhale. And if there's poses that you're confused about, that you go to those poses and you work it out, you know, okay, so am I extending here? And sometimes it can be confusing, say for example with Trikonasana, because say you inhale and you exhale and you go into Trikonasana, then when you come out, is it an inhale or an exhale? Well, that can really depend on, do you want people to ground into their feet? So you would say exhale into your feet and come up, and then take the inhale when you're up, or do you want them to inhale on the way up? So it's not always, you know, cut and dried, which is inhale and exhale. But once you feel comfortable knowing the principles of inhale and exhale, it gets much easier to lead the breath. And the other thing is that sometimes you'll be looking at the student and you'll be like, you know, so what breath are we on? And then you can just look at them and see what they're doing. So noticing whether they're inhaling or exhaling, like if you get lost and you're like, was I on the inhale? Was I on the exhale? What was going on? You can look at them and actually go on the next inhale, so that you're actually following what they're already doing and bringing them into the next breath. So looking at the other students and also having a handle on the moving into the pose and moving out of the pose and what those breaths are. So some of us feel more comfortable at the beginning with staying on the mat, and that's okay in the beginning of your teaching journey. You want to stay on the mat, and a lot of people are, you know, used to seeing someone demonstrating, but starting to move through the room has a whole bunch of benefits. One of them is you can be really aware of what the students are doing, how they're breathing, and you can do their breath. You can start to go with
enjoy
rather than your rhythm, because what I experienced with some of my students is they'll say to me, you're calling the breath too fast. I can't breathe that fast. So something that I often say to the students is, if I'm calling the breath too fast for you, I want you to breathe in your own breath timing, catch up when you're ready. So they never feel like they're not, that they should be breathing in a particular rhythm if it's not their rhythm. So you're giving them their own autonomy in the class to breathe as they feel comfortable. The other thing about moving through the room is that you get used to teaching in any capacity. So say, for instance, you injure yourself. And you can't do the postures at the front of the mat. If you feel confident calling the alignment points and the breathing for each posture, you can be standing anywhere in the room. You can also be much more aware of the misalignments that are happening in your students and give them some corrective alignments. Or if you're a hands-on assist kind of teacher, you can give them hands-on assists. So being able to get off your mat and into the room to seamlessly connect with the breathing and the movements that are happening with your students is going to make them feel like you're more present with them, and it's going to give you a feeling of being really connected with the students. Does that make sense? The other thing that I wanted to add about moving seamlessly through the room, and I mentioned this in one of my little 60-second clips, was, you know, often there's like a personal instruction that you need to give to one person. Say they need to bend their knees in down dog because their hamstrings are really tight and they're rounding in their lower back or whatever. And, you know, you can't physically get to them to say, bend your knee, you know, like really like close up because you don't want to embarrass them or whatever. So you can give that as a general cue for the whole room. So you can say to them, you can say to everybody, if you're feeling tight in your hamstrings, bend your knees, you know, lengthen your spine. If your weight's too much in your hands. So giving those general cues for individuals works really well as well. And that's another way that you can feel, you know, super confident, is just to you keep seeing the little things that are going on in the individuals and just speak to the whole room. And then whoever that applies to, they'll take that correction on. And then if you see that the person has still got their weight too far forward, then you can go over to them as an individual and maybe give them a hands-on assist or mention, you know, you could bend your knees more or something like that. So I spend, like, I'd say 50, not even 50% of my time on the mat. And then, you know, the rest of the time kind of moving through the room and supporting people and showing people, you know, how they can be feeling more comfortable in the poses. Because really it's about feeling comfortable as opposed to, you know, getting the pose right. You know, and if we've got too much weight in the hands or the wrists, it's going to be uncomfortable. So how can we enable the students to feel more comfortable? And if you're hanging on the mat sometimes and just going through the rote instructions, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to service the room. All right. So is that clear? Any other questions? If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask me. All right. So my next point was, how can we do safe transitions? Like, there's always that moment where we say, okay, let's come up to standing, or okay, let's go to the floor. And often what I see in class is when I say, let's come up to standing, everyone just goes, okay, like that, right? Or the people who are a little bit stiff are like, oh, okay, you know, how do I get up to standing or whatever? Or let's go down to the floor. Oh yeah, okay, let's go down to the floor. So that's fine, but it's really nice to have beautiful transitions and to really, you know, support everybody to move safely from one area to the next. So think about, we've got standing poses, we've got sort of poses on the knees, we've got seated poses, and we've got poses lying on the belly, and we've got poses where we're lying on the back. So I thought I would do a little demo of how I move through those different transitions, and this is a recording, so you'll be able to replay this anytime if you forget, and also I'll give it to you. So I'm going to move my mat back. My head might be a little cut off. Can everybody see me? Yeah? Okay. All right, so the first transition is, say you've got your students in a seated position, working with them and explaining to them about breathing or pranayama, and now you want them to go from the floor up to standing. And what's the best way to do that? So I usually get people to come onto their hands and knees, then to take the seat back to the heel, tuck the toes under and the sitting bones high. Then slide if they find that talent and pull the leg forward. And then step the other leg forward, fold forward, and then slowly coming all the way upright to that standing position. So that's how I usually bring people up from the standing. And how do I get them back down? Well, inhaling, raising the arms up, exhaling, bending the knees, folding forward. If they're, a little bit, they need that extra support, I would say bend the knees as much as you can, put the hands down, step one leg back, drop onto the knee, step the other leg back. So now you're in hands, you can bring them back here, and back up to a seated position. And then, say you want to bring them to a seated position, you would slide them around, taking the legs out in front, and then taking them through all the seated poses. Okay, so then we want to go from seated to lying down. It should be pretty obvious, right? We might want them to lie down on the belly. So then I would, again, cross over the legs, come onto the hands and knees, and just gently, I like to go with the easiest way to get people down. So I'm not necessarily going to say chaturanga because maybe some of those students are just not physically able for that. So I might actually say move your knees back and just let your hips fall to the floor first and then slowly lower. And then you're ready for all those, back bending poses or whatever. And then obviously if you want to come onto the back from there, that's pretty straightforward, right? Just take them onto their back. But say you are in a situation where you want them to go straight onto their backs. You've just finished doing Navasana and you want to take them down to do Viparita Karani or Setu Bandha, bridge pose or something like that. A couple of things. If someone has lower back issues, I would literally get them to roll down to the side and then to come onto their back like that. Yeah? And then they're ready for all those things. But if the person doesn't have back issues and you want to continue a little bit of that core work, then you actually have to just slowly lower them down, doing 8 steps, and then you're down. Okay, so that is how I would go from seated to lying, and you're onto the front or onto the back. Now, what if I want to go from my belly, from lying on my belly to standing? Okay, so usually what I would do is just go straight into the up, and then again, moving forward, and then coming up. So in any of these transitions, you're basically looking at bringing in that element of vinyasa, so moving them in that special way from one position to another. So it's seamless. And then you can really incorporate the breath as well. Because if you just say go from up to down, then there's no breath involved. And then we miss that seamless nature of the breath, connecting all the movements and supporting them. Because when we have the mind concentrated on the breath throughout the entire practice, whether it's a practice which is just moving from one pose to another, or whether it's a vinyasa practice, it just enables the students to come out of all that sort of stress that they're experiencing. Because when the mind has that one point of focus, it doesn't go anywhere else. It just stays with what's happening. So the breath really facilitates that and enables that. So those were my transitions. Has anyone got any questions about those or something that you feel I didn't cover that I could cover? All right, so our next point was, how do you craft your language so it applies to all levels? Okay, so here's why what you demonstrate is more important than what you say. So you just saw when I was showing the transitions how I was saying, look, some people, you know, when they're in that, in this position, they just can't lower like this. So if I say, okay, everybody, lower yourself to the floor, and I demonstrate that, then all those students are going to feel like they have to do that as well. But if I say, okay, everybody, just lower yourself to the floor in whatever way feels comfortable, that's going to give them a much clearer demonstration of what I want them to do, which is I want the people who are not so strong, who are really just beginners, I want them to do the easiest variation. So I always demonstrate the easiest variation, and I don't even want to call it the easiest variation anymore, because I had someone point that out to me, that really became a differentiation, that some people felt like, oh, well, if it's easy and if that's difficult, that this must be beginner and this must be advanced. We want to kind of level the playing field here. So we could say things like, I want you to lower in a way that feels comfortable for you, or let's lower in a way that feels safe, or that feels relaxed, or I invite you to lower in whatever way works for you, you know. So, and then demonstrating the easier variation or the more comfortable variation. And this can apply to any posture. So say, for instance, when I'm demonstrating something like down dog, instead of demonstrating it in the full perfect down dog, I usually demonstrate with my knees bent, because most of the students in the room need to do it with their knees. So I say, let's come into down dog, let's bend our knees. Everybody bend your knees. Now, if there's no tension in your hamstrings, if your weight feels like they're really well pressed back, then go ahead and see what happens when you lengthen. If it feels too strong behind the hamstrings, soften the knees again. So always giving them the option to go back to something that's more comfortable, so that there's no stress and strain, and reminding them that when their knees are bent, their thighs will be engaging and opening up those hamstrings. So what you say and what you show are you know, very important in crafting the language so it applies to all levels. I'd love to know from you, what are some postures that you feel are like challenging for you when it applies to different levels? So let's say we're coming into the pose, and the first thing I would say was, if you know that you've got tension in your hamstrings and your inner thighs, so those are the two muscle groups that are really affected, you know, by being tight. So if you've got the tightness in your inner thighs and the back of your leg, you might want to take your legs a little bit wider at the outset, and allow your head is going to be lengthening more towards the floor. However, if you're really tight, I would get you to bend your knees a little bit. That's okay to bend your knees in this position when you fold forward. Now, if you fold forward and your knees are bent and your hands can't reach the floor, of course, we've got a couple of options. You can, you know, put your hands on the block, keep the legs straight, and just lengthen the back of the neck and balance here. Or you can keep your hands on your hips and just lengthen your spine. More comfortable if you go to the wall and, you know, stand at the wall and take your hands to the wall and practice this. The other option is if you know that when you go forward, your head easily touches the floor, then you'll want to bring your feet closer together. Offer all those different variations. So you do all these things before you even take the person to the full position. Those people who feel, you could say, and okay, so if you're here and if you want to just try and take the block away and you just notice that your hands are easily touching the floor, well, then go ahead and just relax and walk your hands and your hands going up to the foot. But if that feels really strong behind your hamstrings, make sure to come up and keep your hands on your shins and lengthen your spine. And then I would explain to them the benefits of both. So I would say, like, you know, when you're lengthening your spine in this position, it activates the front of your body. It activates the paraspinal muscle, controlling the abdominal organs. The only difference when you take your head lower is you just get that bit more of a pitch, and your head is lower than your heart, so it's lowering your blood pressure. You can get as many options as possible. Now, some people, when they bend their knees in that pose, they might roll the knees in too much. You got to keep that cue of, making sure that the heel is behind the broadest part of the foot, and everything's kind of stabilized there, so that they're not damaging the knee. So the alignment of the knee is also important. But often, a person would just like micro bend that knee. They might not need to bend that knee too much. And working with the wall or bringing them up a little higher, because it just gives them, it still gives them extension in the hamstrings, it gives them the spine, and has so many incredible benefits. When you're fully forward, that's like doing a headstand. People who are tight in the neck, they like to do that pose because they can't stand on their head, so it's kind of a nice alternative. Whatever pose you're teaching, start to really understand what the benefits are of that pose for different modifications. Modifications are a huge subject. I'm actually putting together a little bit of an online mentoring program where we'll just cover for a whole hour modifications and the poses and what to do for each pose. And I think that's a topic that we can really go into in depth. But a tip is just being able to take a pose and really be able to offer it in different ways for different levels in the room, and to make it feel accessible to everyone. The next point that I wanted to cover was where to demonstrate and how to work with our dreaded left-right yogi dilemma. So I don't know about anybody else, but I never know what's left and what's right, no matter what I do. I don't know if I'm dyslexic, but it's a kind of a joke. And often the students say to me, oh yeah, every teacher we meet is like that. So I think, is this a yogi thing, or is it just creative types or whatever? Anyway, so the first thing I want to say is demonstrating should be done in whatever direction your students are facing. So the one thing that you don't want to do is put your back to them, because then you can't actually see what they're doing and whether they're working correctly. So always make sure that you're facing the students. So if they're facing the front of the room, you're there. If they're on the side, you're standing on the side. If they're on the other side, and if they're at the back, you're at the back. So you're circumambulating the room as they're facing a different direction. The other thing you want to do is mirror them. So you always want to be, if they're on their right leg, you're going to be on your left leg, and you're going to be mirroring them. So there's a couple of tricks to this, which have really helped me. And the first one is that I always say front leg and back leg if I can't remember what side they're on. The other thing I do is I tap my left side of my body, and I know that they're on the opposite side, because I'm going to mirror them. So I go, okay, this is my left side, but they're on their right side. And whenever I'm on my left side, they're always going to be on their right side. So I kind of give myself that as a cue. If I get really confused, I make an L shape with my left hand. And then when I make that L shape, I'm like, okay, this is the left side of my body. So even if sometimes I'll hit my left side, and I don't know it's my left side. So I make the L shape. I use cues for the students, like we're going to face the front of the room. We're going to turn, instead of saying, okay, we're going to turn to the left or the right, I'll say we're going to go to where the wall with the windows. We're going to face the solid wall, or we're going to face the back of the room, or we're going to face the front of the room. So I use my languaging to not only help them know where they're supposed to be in space, but also to help me feel, to know where I need to be in space. The next one is, it's also, when you don't know your left and your right, it's a great time to get up and move through the room and look at what side the students are on. So sometimes in a sun salutation, sun salutation with lunge, I might say, like, step back with your left leg. Now step forward, and I'm like, which leg do they step back with? Because you've done a chaturanga in between, you've done an up dog, I'm not sure. So I'll just say, the leg that you step back with, step forward with that same leg. And I really hope that the students remember what leg they step back with and what leg they're going to step forward with. So, and then I just often ask the students and say, what side are we on? And then they help me. And I never feel embarrassed about it. I just think this is just my brain. There's not much I can do about it. I do my best. If I get through a whole class without the left-right dilemma, I go, wow, that was amazing. But most of the time, there's always some point where I've got to use one of those tricks to help me get through.
And Rachel, can I put something in?
Yes.
I learned this from somebody that was doing teacher training with me. And what she did was she put an R on and an L on the opposite sides from what they should be when she was facing the group, so that any point she could look down, and even though it was the right side that she was going to on her body, it would say L, so she would know to say left side.
And what, did she draw them on herself, or?
No, she put them on the mat, on her yoga mat.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's amazing. The other thing, I don't know if I said it, but you can also stand behind the student to figure out what side they're on as well. So I often do that to help me. Okay, so next there was to theme or not to theme. So again, this is something that I would love to bring into a whole session, because I think themes and what kinds of themes and what we bring to our classes is so important. Whether we're beginner teachers or whether we're more advanced teachers, working with themes is very powerful. And so there's a lot of different sort of simple themes that we could work with. I said, in my notes I've got, you could go through a theme which is exploring a series of poses, like my class yesterday was balancing. So the whole theme was about balancing, finding balance. We started with a pranayama, which was like a balancing pranayama. Then we did balancing postures. We did arm balances. We did asymmetrical poses, which develop balance. We even started with like a cross crawl exercise about balancing the brain. So you can do something like that, hip openers, forward bends, taking forward bends from standing all the way to seated. So those kind of themes are nice, like posture themes. You can do a theme which is where you're working towards a peak pose. So everything that you're doing is developing a sequence so that eventually you get into handstand. I mean, not that that's like the ideal goal, but even just to get into chair pose or get into trikonasana or something like that, where every pose along the way takes you there. You might want to have a theme of focusing on the breath for the whole class. Vinyasa, movement, flow. This is really nice if you don't teach a specific style which has a specific sequence. You can be a lot more creative in that way. You might want to focus on the season, the time of day, the time of year. It could be something more personal that you're exploring in your own practice that you want to share, your emotional themes, something like that. So themes are really beautiful because they take the person on a journey, either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And themes are, but at the same time, themes can be a challenging thing to bring into your life as a beginning yoga teacher, because it might not be what is appropriate for the group. So what you plan might not be what actually shows up on that day. And as a new yoga teacher, it can really throw you because you're like, well, I planned this whole sequence, but actually the room is filled with men with really tight hamstrings who, are really stressed out. And I had this whole juicy not hamstring. I had some juicy, soft restorative thing, and these guys really want to sweat it out. You might be all gung-ho to start your theme, but then you forget about it, and it's kind of like, then the person will be like, well, what happened to that theme that we were going to do today? You got nervous, or you started, you just went on another tangent. So, and that's okay, but just remembering that sometimes if you plan a theme, it's really good to keep that theme going all the way through. And that might just be like you're taking on too much in the beginning. Themes sometimes don't allow for flexibility and creativity in your teaching because you feel like, oh, I should stick to that. And sometimes you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself because sometimes as a new teacher, you just need to get through each asana and help and support the students, and that might just be enough at the start. So themes are wonderful, and I highly encourage the playfulness of planning and bringing in themes, but it can also be a little bit too much pressure on yourself. So feel free to, give yourself a year or two of teaching before you bring in themes. Like, it's okay. Like, I, as a beginning teacher, I just really planned every class in terms of the poses that I was going to do. I did the little stick figures and I wrote out all the alignment points. And I put the piece of paper next to me on the floor, and I had no shame about looking down at that piece of paper when I didn't know what I was doing. I allowed for long pauses when I was confused and I'd forgotten something. And I probably, bumbled my way through my first 100 classes or whatever. I mean, now I would say, 28 years later, I feel very confident winging it. How to deal with different ages and abilities and injuries in class. Another big subject, right? We can't do that in this quick tips for new yoga teachers. But first of all, you want to find out who has injuries in the class. Make sure that they're cleared by their doctor. Ask them if they know how to manage their injury. And if they do, keep an eye on them, but let them handle it. If you have someone in the class who doesn't know what to do, you want them to have all their props nearby and things you can use to support them in the areas that are tough. So you want them to have the props that they need. Like if they have wrist issues, they'll need a blanket or a wedge. If they have knee issues, they'll need a blanket. Whatever the props are that they need that are useful for that injury, make sure they have it next to them on their mat and also have it on your mat so that you can either say, in general, if you have knee issues, put the blanket underneath, or roll the blanket to protect the knee and show them how to do that, or put the blanket underneath your wrists and have the hands off the edge of the mat if you've got wrist issues, or if you tend to sit, on the back of your sitting bones, sit up on the blanket to center yourself on your sitting bones. So whatever you think that student who has injuries will need, bring them all their props so that they don't have to go looking around for them, and have those same props on your mat so that you can always be available to demonstrate them. So you'll also want that person with the injuries to work near the wall so that if they have balance issues or if they need to use the wall in any way, they're right there. You don't have to then say, oh, you bring your mat over to the wall, but actually set them up there. Set it all up so it's easy for you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And you can show them those variations and modifications. And you want to always offer the pose and the modifications for whoever is in the room. So if you haven't learned modifications for each pose yet, do some research. You can often just Google pose and modifications and see what there is. We have just so many opportunities now to use Google to learn from. And as I said, I'm going to do a whole subject on that, and I'll even have a handout that I can give you on that in my mentoring program. All right, the next one is the dope on teaching styles, and what style of yoga should I teach, or what style of yoga is there out there? And what I really want to emphasize here is everyone learns differently, and so we need to accommodate for that. So some people need to see you demonstrate. Some people need to hear the instructions. Some people need hands-on assists, or they need corrective instruction. Some people learn better with music. music on. Some people learn better when they're outside. Some people learn better in a group, and some people learn better privately. So, so the best teaching style for you is the best way that you learn. So there's a beautiful theory called the theory of multiple intelligences, which was coined by Howard Gardner. And again, I'll put the link for you in the PDF handout. And you can actually do a questionnaire and discover what your learning style is. So if you are someone who is mathematical and musical, you might be someone who really benefits from teaching a lot of alignment with music on in the background. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, just notice what styles you're drawn to and how you feel like they support you, and then incorporate that into your personal teaching style. Because if you can teach what you know, you'll usually attract people who are also attracted to that learning style. Okay, so that's all I really wanted to say about that. I didn't want to go into like, oh, you know, Kundalini and this and that, because it's more to do with your personal style as a teacher and what you resonate with and what works for you and how you understand things. Because if you're working with a style that you really flow with and that you really understand, then you're going to communicate that really well to your students, and those students are going to keep wanting to come back because there's just that flow and that connection there. All right, and the last thing on our webinar is setting boundaries on and off the mat. So this is all about a student-teacher relationship, and I always feel like we need to be clear as teachers from the outset what our expectations are of the students. You know, it can often be that we feel we need to just do whatever the students are expecting for them to come back. But it's not like that. It really is about setting clear boundaries for what you as a teacher, the kind of atmosphere that you want in your class, because that will set you up for the rest of your teaching life. So here are some questions to ask yourself. Are you okay about students arriving late or not? How do you want them to set up and put away props? Like, do you want them to just do you want them to set themselves up? Do you want to have the room set up before they come in? Do you want to make sure they put the props away neatly? So you need to communicate that. What about the noise factor before and after class? Do you want people to be quiet when they come in and just settle onto their mats and go into a pose? Or are you happy to have students be lively and friendly and chatting with each other? You know, what about when they leave? Do you want it to be an atmosphere of calm and peace, or do you want it to be, again, chatty and that sort of thing? So you can set those boundaries. So you want to think about the atmosphere you want to create, and you want to reinforce that in a loving and nurturing way. So sometimes I say things like, so come in, set up your mat, and why don't you get into Vibhuti Purani or Baddha Konasana, or just some quiet pose so you can just be with yourself. So I might say that as people are coming into the room, and then sure enough, maybe 2 or 3 people are lying in Baddha Konasana and people come in and get the vibe, like it's quiet vibe. However, if I start chatting with everybody and how you doing and da-da-da, then when people start coming in, they go, oh, it's a chatty vibe, yeah? So I set the vibe for what I want in the room so the students know. Now, at the end of class, like I said, you might want an atmosphere of quiet. You might just give them a little intention or focus at the end of the class. Like sometimes I say something like, so just think about all the things that brought you to this moment, and and let that inspire the rest of your day. And if you're feeling quiet, take that quietude with you into the rest of your day, something like that. So just inspiring that quiet at the end. And then, the question you want to ask yourself is, do you want to socialize with the students, or do you want to keep that more private? So that's another kind of aspect. And I just wanted to share in closing just like a little story about when I was a private yoga teacher. I had this lovely client up in New York on the Upper East Side, And he was really chatty, and he loved to have me stay after the class finished and, you know, have breakfast with him and chat with him. And often it was just really inappropriate for me. I had another student I had to get to, you know, I had to get downtown from uptown. And so what I would do to signal that I wasn't available for breakfast and all that was, as soon as I said namaste, thank you for a beautiful session, I would go over to my bag and start putting on my shoes. And it felt really rude at first, but it was really the only way I could get out of there quickly and to show him that I wasn't available to stay for breakfast. Now, sometimes I would stay, and I'd say, sure, I'll join you for breakfast. But most of the time, you know, I would just keep that boundary really, really clear. So I think that's really the main tip, is make sure you know, remember that you are the teacher and you can set the mood and the tone for the class and how you want things done. And you can do that in a loving and nurturing way. So the other thing is just to remember that you're not a therapist, you're not a doctor, you're a yoga teacher. And so if any of those kind of complicated things come towards you from your students, again, it's really good to set a boundary and say, either, look, I don't know the answer to that question, let me look it up and I'll get back to you. Or maybe this is a question that's better for someone who can see you in a professional capacity or something like that. Because, you know, you're not equipped as a yoga teacher to deal with emotional issues unless you are a therapist and a doctor, or a doctor in the thing. So we need to just be really clear about what we will be available for and what we won't be available for. Okay, so those are my 8 tips. It's a lot to get through in an hour. I hope it was useful for you. And for those people who are watching the replay, thanks so much for tuning in. If you made it all the way to the end. And like I said, I wanted to share with you, there's a couple of things that I'm doing over the next 3 months that I'm really excited about. And I'll just talk about it for a few minutes, and I'll also pop it into the follow-up newsletter with the PDF, is that I'm running a 3-month online program. It's going to be meeting twice a month, an hour for those 2 times, and we've got set themes for each one. And there'll be like a follow-up in between. We'll have a Facebook group, and I'll give you an assignment at the end of each mentoring session. So you physically take the ideas, take them into practice, and then you come back into the mentoring group and tell us how it's going, what you're learning, what you're seeing, feedback, and all that sort of thing. And I want to make it available for a really inexpensive price. So it's only going to be $149 for the 3 months, which is ridiculous, because you're going to get CPD points for it as well for Yoga Australia. So, and I want to limit the numbers. So if you're keen to do something like this, just, you know, reply when I send out the newsletter, just reply and I'll put an outline of what's involved. But just quickly, the first week is going to be sequencing, how we can craft sequences and feel confident with our sequencing, and how sequencing is really, it's like a creative wellspring. The second session will be how to work one-on-one, specifically looking at personality types of students and what kinds of sequences are appropriate for different personality types. And this is something that I've been working on a lot and sharing a lot in my mentoring. How to bring Ayurveda into your classes and give your students basic Ayurvedic guidelines that they can take off from that. That'll be session 3. Session 4 is all about the modifications and how to work with modifications and props and all that. The emotional side of teaching, the student-teacher relationship, how to get students motivated beyond just the class, how to get them involved in privates. And then the last one is going to be marketing, because another business that I run is practical media strategy for yogis, and how to work with Instagram, Facebook, how to work with profiles, and how to just increase your client base, your newsletter, and all that sort of stuff. So those are our 6 topics for the 3 months. If something like this interests you, just get in touch. Like I said, $149. It's not a huge investment, but I'm sure it'll be a massive return. And if you enjoyed this webinar, just let me know, send me a message and tell me how you went, and especially how it has helped you in your teaching when you actually practice and when you go to teach next time, because that's where you'll really feel the benefits of this.
Thank you.